December 1872. In the open Atlantic, a merchant brigantine moves through rough water under partial sail. Another vessel, the Dei Gratia, closes the distance. Her captain recognizes the ship. It is the Mary Celeste, which left New York before him and should already be far ahead on the route to Genoa. Signals bring no answer. Two sailors cross over to investigate. They climb onto a wet, disordered deck and call below. No one responds. The captain is gone. His wife and 2-year-old daughter are gone. 7 crewmen are gone. Yet the vessel beneath their feet is not a wreck. She can still sail. Her cargo remains in the hold. Personal belongings remain aboard. The discovery creates an image almost too perfect for legend, a ship continuing alone after every person on it has vanished. But the famous version of the story has accumulated details that were never there. There was no documented meal still warm on the table. There were no cups of tea interrupted in mid-sip. To understand what happened, we have to discard the ghost story and stay with what the boarding party actually found. The real evidence is less theatrical, but far more revealing. The Mary Celeste sailed from New York on November 7th, bound for Genoa with a cargo of 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol. Captain Benjamin Briggs was an experienced mariner. Traveling with him were his wife Sarah, their young daughter Sophia, and 7 sailors. Nothing about this was a pleasure cruise, but it was not an improvised voyage either. Briggs had a reputation to protect, a valuable cargo to deliver, and his family aboard. The ship crossed difficult autumn weather for more than 2 weeks. Its last surviving log information places it near Santa Maria in the Azores on the morning of November 25th. Then the record stops. 10 days later, the Dei Gratia encountered the vessel hundreds of miles away. That gap is the center of the mystery. No witness saw the evacuation. No survivor described an accident. Every explanation begins after the decisive moment and works backward from an abandoned ship. The basic question is not why 10 people would willingly disappear. It is what could make a responsible captain believe that remaining aboard was more dangerous than entering a small boat in the Atlantic. That distinction matters, because the missing boat suggests a deliberate evacuation rather than people being swept away one by one. The condition of the Mary Celeste was strange, but not supernatural. Some sails and rigging were damaged. Cargo hatches had been disturbed. Water had entered the vessel, although not enough to prevent the Dei Gratia crew from sailing her onward. One of the pumps was partly disassembled. A sounding rod, used to measure liquid in the hold, was nearby. The ship's papers and Captain Briggs's navigational instruments were missing. So was the boat normally carried on deck. Those missing items fit a captain preparing to leave, even if only temporarily. Other details argue against a simple robbery. The cargo was largely intact. The people were gone, but there was no clear scene of mass violence. The boarding sailors did not report the perfect domestic tableau repeated in later retellings. The actual clues point in several directions at once. A seaworthy hull says the evacuation was unnecessary. A disassembled pump and sounding equipment say someone was worried about water. Missing navigation tools say the departure was organized. The absent boat says the group probably left together. The ship's survival tells us only that the danger they feared did not ultimately destroy it. It does not prove that the danger looked imaginary at the time. The Dei Gratia crew divided itself and sailed both vessels toward Gibraltar. Bringing the abandoned ship into port was difficult and dangerous, but a successful salvage claim could be valuable. Instead of a routine reward hearing, the case became an investigation. Gibraltar's Attorney General, Frederick Saul Flood, suspected foul play and pursued evidence of fraud or violence. Suspicion then fed the newspapers. A contemporary report claimed pirates for murder sailors might be responsible and repeated allegations about stains and damage aboard. That report is historically important because it shows what people believed while the inquiry was unfolding. It is not proof that the allegations were true. After months of examination, the proceeding produced no conclusive evidence of murder, mutiny, piracy, or an insurance conspiracy. The salvagers received a reduced award, reflecting the court's unease, but suspicion is not a verdict. This is where the Mary Celeste becomes a lesson in fact-checking. A dramatic claim can be genuinely old, widely printed, and still remain only a claim. The absence of a solved crime did not end public interest. It created open space for more stories to enter. 12 years after the discovery, Arthur Conan Doyle published a fictional account inspired by the case. He changed the vessel's name to Mary Celeste and invented characters and events. The story was effective enough that parts of its fiction blended into popular memory. Later retellings added the untouched meal, the smoking pipes, and other signs of life halted in a single instant. The name Marie Celeste is still repeated today. None of that makes the underlying mystery less powerful. It shows how an unresolved event is vulnerable to narrative improvement. Real maritime evidence is technical and incomplete. Pump components, hatch covers, rigging, water levels, a missing yawl, a last recorded position. Fiction converts those fragments into a clean visual riddle. Everyone vanished between one breath and the next. The documented case is more human. 10 people probably made a decision under pressure using incomplete information. Their ship then survived without them, racing the reason for that decision. The legend asks what force removed them. The evidence asks what they feared, what they measured, and what they believed about their position. The industrial alcohol in the hold has driven many theories. 9 barrels were later found empty, and leaking vapor sounds like an immediate explanation. Perhaps the crew feared an explosion and escaped before anything ignited. Experiments and reconstructions have explored whether vapor could create a frightening pressure event without leaving obvious burn damage. But the evidence does not allow us to state that an explosion happened. The main hatch was reported secured by the boarding party, and no decisive physical trace survives. The cargo remains relevant because a captain could react to the possibility of danger rather than an actual blast. An unfamiliar odor, leaking barrels, or sudden sound below deck might change the calculation, especially after heavy weather. Still, the alcohol theory alone does not explain every clue. It competes with the more ordinary maritime problem, uncertainty about water in the hold. The strongest reconstruction does not need a monster, a mutiny, or a perfectly timed explosion. It needs a captain who cannot reliably answer the most important question aboard a wooden ship: are we taking on more water than the pumps can remove? A later investigation combined the historical record with weather and drift data. Its reconstruction suggests Briggs may have been farther from his expected position than he realized. Rough weather had punished the voyage. Debris from earlier work or cargo could have interfered with the pumps. One pump was found disassembled, exactly what sailors might do while diagnosing a problem. With the tightly packed hold, measuring water accurately could be difficult. Then land appeared. Santa Maria offered the last nearby refuge before a long open water passage. Imagine the decision from Briggs's position, not from ours. He does not know that the Mary Celeste will remain afloat for days. He knows his position has been uncertain, the weather has been hard, the pump cannot be trusted, and his wife and child are aboard. The small boat may have been attached to the ship by a line, allowing everyone to wait close while assessing the danger. If that line parted, the wind could carry the brigantine away faster than a loaded open boat could follow. The sequence fits several clues, but it remains a theory. No document records the order. No wreckage confirms the final moments. It is persuasive because it turns an apparently irrational abandonment into a temporary safety measure that failed catastrophically. The Mary Celeste was not discovered frozen in a perfect moment of domestic life. It was a working ship shaped by weather, damaged rigging, water, missing equipment, and the decisions of people we cannot interview. The 10 aboard were never found. The court did not prove murder or fraud. Modern reconstruction can show that a mistaken but rational evacuation was possible, not that it certainly happened. That boundary is the honest ending. The mystery survives because the best explanation depends on one event that left no witness, a captain ordering everyone into the boat. If the ship had sunk, his decision might have looked wise. Because it survived and sailed on, the same decision looks impossible. The empty vessel became the evidence against the people who had tried to escape it. More than a century later, we can strip away the warm meal, the supernatural visitors, and the invented violence. What remains is still unsettling: a seaworthy ship moving across the Atlantic, a missing boat, and 10 people whose safest option may have carried them beyond rescue.